Hey, y'all. Welcome to Shades of Brown, the podcast that discusses the ever-evolving and sometimes contradicting thoughts of a Black millennial. I'm your host, AlyB, and I'm so very thankful that you are here with me for this episode. If it's your first time with me, a very special welcome to you, and I hope that you will stick around. I have a very, very special guest with me this week. Her name is Latonya Howell. She is the author of The Trauma Was Necessary. She's also a wife, artist, bonus mom, and an HR executive living in Salt Lake City, Utah. And she is my friend. Welcome to Shades of Brown, Latonya. How you doing?
I'm so good. How are you, AlyB?
I'm doing good. It's so good to have you here, girl. I miss you.
I'm excited. I know. I'm excited.
All right. So before we start unpacking all of the things, let's get into this first segment, which is Shades of Dating. This is a segment where me and my guests, we just share ridiculous dating stories. And though you are happily married, Latonya, I am sure you've got plenty of good stories that predate your marriage because you are a Black woman living in Utah. And let me tell you, child, if you don't know about that life, it is something special being a Black single woman in Utah, wanting to marry a Black man. My God. So I'm certain you got some good stories. Girl, spill the tea.
All right. I do. I have many that I could choose from, but I'm going to tell you about one that sticks out the most for me. So I was dating this man from North Carolina. He and I had been dating for, I think, probably a year at this point. His father, unfortunately, passed away. None of his family could afford to get him back to North Carolina for his father's funeral. He wasn't able to afford it on his own. He had some of it, but not all of it. So me being the trusting, loyal person that I am, I helped to pay for this man to get to North Carolina for his funeral. Happy to do it, right? I'm like,
very sweet of you.
Thank you. I'm like, he's in a position of need. Let me help out. So he ends up staying in North Carolina for about a month. He comes back to Utah. He and I are hanging out one night and he leaves his phone on the couch. And, I snooped. I did. I just felt like I needed to. Come to find out, the entire time this man was in North Carolina with the money that I helped use to get him there, he was speaking to several different women. Literally from the moment he touched down, he was already lined up to speak with people during his father's funeral and all the traumatic events that were going on. So needless to say, ended up breaking up with him. He moved back to North Carolina, like within days of us breaking up. And then this Negro proceeded to send me an engagement ring through FedEx to propose to me.
Girl. What?
Yes, FedEx.
You got a proposal through the mail?
Doing this, right? So I have FedEx contacting me, telling me that I need to sign for something. And I'm like, oh, maybe it's something for work. I don't know what's going on. Sign for it, open it up. He has a note in there, and it is an engagement ring. An ugly one at that. But that's besides the point.
You got a proposal through the mail. Where they do that at?
Through the mail. Yes.
Wow. No, that's a pretty wild story. That's a pretty wild story.
Yeah.
People be trifling.
So trifling.
Dang. There's a lot to unpack in just that one day. Like, that's a lot. That was a lot of twists and turns in one little story.
It was a lot. It was a lot.
You're supposed to be grieving and you over here just doing all the things.
Wild. I mean, wild. Like, I wasted no time. No time at all. Flight landed at like 12:05. He was with some chick at 1:00. Like,
oh my gosh. Dang, man. Y'all do, men and women of God, do better.
Do better.
That's wild. Okay. Anywho, well, thank you, praise God, that you are now with a lovely man and have a beautiful marriage. Praise God. Okay. So let's unpack it. You recently wrote a book, as I mentioned, called The Trauma Was Necessary. And I wanted to have this conversation with you to unpack all the things because I felt like what you share here is so relevant to and is aligned with some of the things that I share here on Shades of Brown. So, trigger warning. Before you continue listening to this episode, people of God, saints and friends, please be advised this episode may highlight several traumatic events, including but not limited to foster care experiences, incarceration, divorce, loss of a child, etc. Now we shall continue. So, what led you to write this book, Latonya? I personally know you to be an extremely low-key person, a very private person. So, how did this even come about?
Short answer, God.
Yeah.
So, and I talk about this in my book because I talk about the fact that I am known to be a very private, closed off person. When I was younger and I was dealing with a lot of the traumatic events that I discuss, I had moments where I just cried and I'm like, why is this happening to me? What is wrong with me? Why are you punishing me? That kind of thing. And one day, clear as day, I heard God say, this is not for you. This is for you to help other people. Okay. All right. Kind of sat on that for a little bit. And then about 10 years ago, I heard those same words again, but this time it came with write a book. Right. And I don't know, I didn't know anything about writing a book. I'm envisioning in my mind this process where you have to go and you have to sit down and you have to discuss your book idea in a boardroom full of people and they have to give you the thumbs up, right? I have no idea where to start with this. And so I kind of sat on that, started writing, nothing major, but started writing it, knowing that that's what I was being assigned to do, and then just trusting that God would figure out the rest for me.
Wow. So you've been sitting on this for over a decade.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
And I don't ever recall you ever mentioning your book. Ever. You just been holding it in your belly, girl, just over here carrying all these things. Wow.
And the part of that is just because I didn't know if I could do it. I doubted myself the entire process, right? And I didn't know if it would actually happen or how it would happen. So it was fearful for sure.
Yeah. I just have to pause, girl. You are just so beautiful. Like your skin is just vibrant. You're just glowing. Good Lord, Latonya, you're so pretty. Like I was legit distracted just now. Like, oh my gosh, she's so freaking gorgeous.
Back at you for many, many years. I called Allison my woman crush every day because you're always stunning. The way you carry yourself, you're just like this Southern, just charming, I love it. And I still feel that way about you.
Oh, that's so sweet. I remember one time Latonya was like, she's like, girl, if I was gay, you'd be my type.
Yeah, that's something I would say. I have this habit of like complimenting my friends, but making it uncomfortable for them.
Awkward. Like, okay.
Oh, good times.
Okay, back to the conversation, guys. So, okay, clearly, the book is about trauma, right? And you talk in the book about how trauma shapes us and informs us even long term. And clearly we know that some traumatic events, have immediate, effects, right? If you're in a car accident, right, there's immediate pain possibly or immediate scarring, right? But there's also long-term impacts. Can you, before I say that, you also shared that it wasn't until your 20s that you even realized just how much trauma impacted you. Can you share a few examples of how trauma was showing up for you or how it continues to show up for you in just your day-to-day living?
Yeah, I think my personality, right? So if you know me, you know that I'm very sarcastic. I'm very witty. I'm also very blunt. which those things are great and they've served me well. But at the end of the day, those are all trauma responses to different events that have happened in my life, right? Sarcasm comes from a place of me not feeling heard as a child and me feeling like no matter how many times I try to express what I'm dealing with, it fell on deaf ears. So you're not going to take it serious. I'm not going to take it serious, kind of thing, right? I think dating was very eye-opening for me as well, and understanding that the way that I responded to certain events was exactly that. It was a trauma response. So basically, I've learned that this personality that I've grown to love of myself is basically just a bunch of trauma responses jumbled up together.
Yeah, jumbled up top, man. It can be quite overwhelming and intimidating to come into the awareness that, oh snap, my personality is just full of trauma responses. And before I continue, I want to make it plain, like in what we're talking about. I want to give a general overview. I don't want to give too much away of your personal story, but I do want to give a general overview. So let's go back to your childhood, right? The book talks about how you were born in quite unconventional circumstances. Can you share a bit with us, just a quick synopsis of like how you came into this world? Let me say this, y'all. This line in the book, it just stood out to me like, dang, you say in chapter 1, life was unfair before I even knew I was alive. That is so heavy. Can you like give us a quick synopsis of like what your world was when you came into this world?
Yes. So I was born in prison. My mother was incarcerated when she gave birth to me. So I immediately went into foster care. My father knew nothing of me. So yeah, right out the door, it was life was life.
Yeah, man. Life was life from day one.
From day one.
And so you have a mom who cannot, even if she wanted to, cannot care for you. And you have a father who does not even know you are alive. So essentially you are parentless. When it comes to, we're both believers, right? We believe in Jesus Christ. Why do you believe God allows these things when it comes to experiencing such awful traumatic things? And you did touch on it earlier. Can you expound a bit? Because it's just like as you say, you know, life was unfair before you even came in here. It's like, but why though? And we know that God does not cause these things, right? Like God isn't just like, yeah, I'm going to ruin your life. I'm going to make things unfair for you. I'm going to make things hard for you. I'm going to cause you trauma. I don't believe God causes traumatic events. But sometimes it's just like, but you just going to stand by though, God? Like, can you share a bit more about like some of the why when it comes to, you know, God allowing these things?
Yes. So the Bible tells us that everything that happens with us was predestined. It was assigned to us in our mother's womb, essentially. And God knew that I would carry out what he had called me to do. He knew that I would be obedient and have that dedication to him to go through with being vulnerable and putting myself on the line and exposing everything that I've gone through. And so I wouldn't go as far to say that he causes it to happen to us or he allows it to happen to us, but certainly we go through it so that we can help someone else through the situation, right? So that someone else who's feeling the experiences that I felt, the trauma, all of that, suicidal, all of those things has some sort of like, okay, I can make it through this too. And so, that's part of being a vessel for God. And he knew I would say yes to him. And so this is part of that journey.
And that speaks to a quote in your book that says, I believe that we were given rebellious spirits because we are the chosen generation to break the cycle that has kept our bloodlines in bondage for so long. And I thought that was really powerful because it's just like, I too have had that like, why me moment, in regards to certain circumstances I've experienced. And I remember being in prayer one day and Holy Spirit sort of revealing to me some things that happened well before I came to this world. My mom came into this world and possibly even my grandma. There were some things that happened generations prior that we were just born into. And maybe God, tried to heal things through my grandma or through my mom, or through other people, maybe, right? But as you talked about, he knows who he can trust with going against the grain and with being rebellious and with an assignment that requires you to be a bit confrontational, honestly, because it's like these are things that impact the bloodline completely, So I thought that line in your book was extremely powerful because it takes someone who does have a rebellious spirit to say, it stops with me. Like, I'm not just going to feel it. We're going to deal with this stuff. We can't continue another generation like this because it don't have to be this way. So I love that you say, like, he knew I was going to say yes. He knew I was going to be obedient. So why not me? Why not me? That's really, really beautiful. In chapter 1, you also say that understanding what runs in your family gives you an advantage in handling trauma because it can give you some insight into what you may face, possibly. It can also show you what to avoid so that you don't run into the same issues. Why do you think so many people are afraid to accept and confront the reality of their bloodline? It's like we know so many people who are aware of their family history, of the things that show up, of the patterns, whether it's alcohol abuse or substance abuse or premarital, whatever, babies out of wedlock, whatever it is, we see these patterns and it's like, we all seeing this. Why isn't anyone like having to come to Jesus meeting? Why do you think it's difficult for many of us to accept the reality of what our family bloodline is?
Because it requires us to be vulnerable. It requires us to not hide behind things, but stand up and say, okay, this is happening in my family. This has happened in my family. I don't want it to continue. So many times we want to hide. We're taught to hide and to be secretive. What happens in the family stays in the family. And so standing up to it, you can't do that. You have to be vulnerable and you have to talk about it and you have to confess and say, like, listen, my family, we got some things on us. We're dealing with some things. And that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah. There are things in this book that you detail that literally seem like it's a script from a straight up Lifetime movie, and it's like sharing those things. It isn't easy, right? To share how, because your mother was incarcerated, you had to have social workers come, and care for you or take you. And you describe a particular day that sticks with you. And I don't want to give too much away, but it's like, I'm so thankful that God could trust you with this because it does take quite vulnerability to risk, right? Like to risk being seen. It's interesting that a core human need for us, right, is to be seen and heard. Yet, one of our deepest fears is also to be fully seen, right? Like, it's so ironic.
We want you to see what we want you to see, right?
Yeah.
Like, we don't want you to see the full picture. Yeah. We want to show you what we want to show you. And that's it.
Yeah. And we often act as if there's such shame to come from a family that is quote unquote broken or not, functional. And it's just like, we are all a bunch of flawed people just trying to figure it out. You know what I'm saying? It's like, Brene Brown talks about how like shame can't survive in safe spaces where shame can't survive when you tell your story in safe spaces, right? And it's like, the more we share, the more we become safe spaces, the more we are accepting, we realize, oh, shame, that's a lie. Like, we need to be free. Forget all that other stuff. Like, forget that. So I love that you share how we need to understand our family history. It's not about exposing people and making folks look bad. It's like, no. We need to understand where we come from in order to better cultivate our future, to better cultivate a legacy that is not full of pain and trauma and all of the things. So I just love that you break down how important it is for us to understand our history. In what ways have you personally safeguarded yourself from being vulnerable to the patterns that run in your family?
Yeah, so I think drug abuse is a major one, alcoholism, major patterns that run in my family. So for me, because I watched my mom, and I talk about this in the book, I watched my mom struggle big time with drug addiction, in and out of prison, unable to like really control herself. That was a natural aversion for me when it came to heavy drug use. Same with alcohol. I, enjoy a drink every now and again, but you'll never see me drunk. You'll never see me just not in control of myself.
Yeah.
I also think just praying over certain things, right? Because something that manifests for me through the traumatic experiences that I've had is forms of anxiety and just being scared that because this happened to me, I'm going to push that forward to other people that are close to me, or I may miss out on opportunities, whatever the case might be, because of the experiences I went through. So praying over those situations as they come up, and praying over my life and the life of future generations in my bloodline as I learn more. Another, I talk about, I don't know if I talk about this in my book, but like murder. I have a bloodline of murderers, right? That comes from anger. We have anger issues in my family. And so being aware of that and learning how to control my anger, going to therapy, learning coping mechanisms, learning how to function, knowing that that's on my bloodline.
Yeah. And this is like, it's not funny, but it was funny to me, like how you wrote it in the book. You talk about, of course, how you didn't, know your father, but that, the little bit you did know of him, you knew that he was a good man, right? But you also mentioned that he was trained in martial arts, and that in the state of Illinois, his fists were registered as weapons.
Yep.
How does that, like Houseway, like what?
Deadly weapon is something that, if not used properly, can lead to death, basically.
That is why I was reading, like, I'm thankful that we, never had any beef, because I don't want no problems. I don't want no problems. I was like, wait, what? Yeah, didn't know my dad. I just know that his fists were deadly. Yep. Like, what?
Yep.
Did you ever become comfortable with your pain, or even numb to it?
Numb to it, absolutely. I talk about, so much of my personality being trauma responses. I'm very nonchalant about life. Like, Allison, you actually, you kind of tease me about this a lot, because things can be on fire, and I am that one person who's like, oh, well,
all right,
what are we gonna do?
This is gonna burn.
It's happening. What are we gonna do? Right?
I have never met a more unbothered person. I really have not. It is the wildest thing, y'all. Like, she does not raise her voice. She always talks like this, y'all. Like, nothing gets Latonya riled up. And I'm like, girl, how did you do this?
It's a trauma response, and it's a factor of me numbing myself to certain things that happen to safeguard myself and protect myself, because as a child, I didn't have adults that were doing that. So I had to learn mechanisms to do it. Ooh. And me becoming nonchalant was one of those.
Jesus. Like, girl, it's so much. Okay. All right. So that clearly being, a way that you guarded yourself and coped. Were there other coping mechanisms and other survival strategies that you had? And what are some that you maybe still have in regards to those trauma responses, like I know that then, right, as your child or maybe a preteen, a teenager, you may not even recognize it as that, right? It's like, this is just who I am.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look back, you can see, okay, that was a coping mechanism. That was a defense mechanism. Like I was like, doing this because of that. Like what were some of those things?
Oh man, so many. Anger. I always talk about how when I was younger, I had a really bad temper, and it still comes out every once in a while, right? But anger is nothing but pain. It's sadness that is being released in a more aggressive form, if you will, right? So that's one of them. I would also say feeling unheard as a child. When I feel unheard now, I just shut down. I just stop talking, just get quiet. Because you're not going to hear me no matter what I say, so I'm not wasting my breath. So you figure it out.
Yeah, man. Let's shift from childhood. So, listeners, as you read this book, you'll see, that Latonya was in and out of different foster homes, and experiencing and seeing a lot, right? And that carries you into life as an adult. Now you have moved from Illinois. You are living in Utah with your foster family, and fast forward, you have graduated high school, college. You're living your best life, as an adult. And now you come into getting married, starting a family, having a baby, right? Mm-hmm. And I can imagine that being like, the light at the end of the tunnel, right? Like, things are finally making sense. There's some, sense of normalcy in my life, right? Like this is for many of us, that's the pinnacle, right? Like, white picket fence, the husband, or the spouse, the child, whatever. Like, this is it. A good career, we got a good church family, good community. Life is coming together. The puzzle pieces come together. But then that story also ends in tragedy. Can you talk about like that process? How do you even recover when you now have all the things and then you lose that too? You lose your child and you also lose your marriage. Like, girl, it's like, all right now, Lord, I'm tired of being your strongest soldier. Like, how do you even recover?
Had enough challenges.
Right.
It is a choice. It is, and I talk about this a lot in the book. It is a day by day, sometimes minute by minute choice. When my daughter passed away, so she passed away from SIDS. She basically just went to sleep, never woke up. When she passed away, I remember feeling like I was literally at a crossroad, right? And it was like, okay, I can allow this thing, my worst nightmare that just happened to me, to completely eat me alive, or I can choose to keep moving forward. I have no idea what moving forward looks like. I have no idea if I can do it, but I can trust God and go that route. You know? I remember the night she passed away, or the evening of that she had passed away, my first lady at the time came over to our apartment, and she looked at me, and I'm in just shock, right? I'm in go mode. She grabbed my hand and she says, "You know what? It's okay to be mad at God. It's okay for you to be mad at God right now." And I knew that if I allowed myself to go there, I would maybe never come back from that.
Yeah.
I would be stuck there, right? And it was a literal choice of seeing myself at this crossroad and going, okay, I don't want that path. I don't know what this path of going forward and trusting God looks like, but I think I'm going to take my chances there. And it wasn't easy. Right. It wasn't like I chose that path and things were rosy and flowers and nothing like that. It was very difficult. And like I said, even now to this day, when her death anniversary comes up, when her birthday comes up, the holiday season, Mother's Day, right? All of those holidays, it is me constantly choosing to make that decision to trust God and keep going.
Whew. Jesus Christ. My God. I think that's so powerful. Even you having the awareness, like I have to make a choice because I may like go off the rails if I don't like consciously decide another way. I think that's really powerful. I don't know that, I don't know. I don't know why God chooses certain folks, certain things, but I'm just thinking about like the average person. I don't know that many would even have that moment, right? Like because sometimes we can be so consumed by emotions and circumstances, and that's no judgment. Like that's just life, right? We can be so consumed with what's happening externally that we don't even pay attention to what's happening internally. So for you to have that moment, with yourself and say, all right, like we have decisions to make that, have severe implications, considering which path I take. I honestly think it speaks to Holy Spirit, right? The power of God in you, and his sovereignty, even in moments like that, to be like, all right, are you gonna rock with me? Like you might be mad for a minute. You might be angry, and rightfully so. But if you rock with me, I got you. Man, God's grace is sufficient, man. That just sucks. That sucks.
Yeah.
And remember, I didn't know you when you were married. We're referring to your first marriage. I didn't know you when you were married, but I remember you telling me once that, of course, after your child passed, sometime after that, you ultimately ended up ending that marriage. And I remember you telling me that it was a simple thing that would remind you were divorced, such as like struggling to unzip a dress by yourself, right? Like,
oh yes,
those
coat hanger.
Yeah.
Learn how to use a coat hanger to zip my dress and unzip it.
Man. And I hear you saying, like clearly it wasn't all, roses and sunshine after you chose, right? While you're at the crossroads. And you talk about how your first lady gave you permission to be angry. Did you ever kind of yield into that emotion? Like, God, I'm upset with you because I feel like you have failed me yet again.
Yes. And I would say I yield to that emotion sometimes now, right? Because here I am. I'm in my second marriage now. I'm still desiring to have another child. It hasn't happened for me yet. I have a bonus son, and I'm extremely grateful for that, right? Yeah. But I still have those moments when Mother's Day comes around, when, those desires to have another child come around, where I'm like, God, like, okay, this has been a really long time. I'm getting older now, right? And it's allowing myself the freedom, because I feel like I'm more spiritually mature now to where I can allow myself to go there, but also bring myself out of that and not dwell there.
Yeah.
So it still happens.
Yeah. Just in general, right? Like what? Because clearly I'm talking to the healed version of Latonya, right? Like this is a woman who's on the other side, who has been processed, who has been refined. But just in general, though, like even when you were in the thick of it, right? What has kept you going all these years?
Faith, every month when the cycle comes, right? And I find myself getting sad and getting depressed. And I say, okay, God, I'm choosing to trust you anyway. It's a choice. I can't express it enough. Like it is a choice. And also just knowing that God covered me and protected me and brought me through my worst nightmare. Like losing a child was the ultimate worst thing I could have ever imagined happening to me, right? Yeah. And knowing that he was able to like hold me and literally carry me through that process, it makes me know that there's nothing he can't do on the go forward.
This episode is sponsored by the brand new book, Bye Bye Burnout, written by Nikita Lawrence. Nikita is an international speaker, best-selling author, HR leader, and executive coach, mentoring corporate women to rise, accelerate their purpose, and successfully navigate their careers in and outside of corporate America. Nikita helps women dismantle the negative patterns that have been keeping them stuck, exhausted, unsure of themselves and their worth using a simple framework. Her book, Bye Bye Burnout, is a no-shame guide written to help successful women leaders unpack their stressors, find freedom from exhaustion, and experience more peace in their life and work. This book is not a replacement for medical advice, but is a trusted companion to your medical provider's recommended treatment or recovery plan. Bye Bye Burnout is a must-read for women, moms, wives, sisters, co-workers, and friends going through a season of hardship or transition who want peace and need to silence the outside noise to hear from the small, still voice inside. Purchase your copy at www.wakeupyourgift.com and save 10% using the code Shades of Brown. Learn more about Nikita's work at nikitalawrence.com. And I've got my copy right here, and y'all, I've really been enjoying it. It allows me to decompress. She has some stuff in here. One, the content is just really, really good. And before each chapter, there's this affirmation or phrase where I can like color in, you know? So I've been like coloring in stuff, and it's really been relaxing along with reading such good content. So good that I've gone and bought her other book. So I'm waiting for that to arrive as well. And yeah, this is really, really good, guys. So again, you can purchase your copy and save 10% using the code Shades of Brown. Thank you to our sponsor. Back to the show.
Yeah. And knowing that he was able to like hold me and literally carry me through that process, it makes me know that there's nothing he can't do on the go forward.
Man. Considering, we talk about how we analyze our personality and our character, and we see how trauma has impacted these things, right? How it has shaped our identity, sort of. When you come into finding your safe space and you do find this beautiful love again, right? And you been married a few years now, right? It's 3, 4?
Yeah, 3 years. Just
3
on
years,
November
right?
25th. Yeah.
When you come into that space, right? And it's like, okay, all this, right? You use that your sarcasm, you being nonchalant. How do you reconcile your personality when you finally realize, oh, snap, I'm safe? Like, is there a tension there in yielding these trauma responses when it's like, okay, I'm healed over here, we good? How does that work for you?
Yeah. I'll say my husband hates my sarcasm. He's not a fan, but God bless me with the man who calls me out on that. And by him doing so, it forces me to take down that defense mechanism and have real conversations about why I'm responding that way. Right. And so he'll even say to me sometimes like, okay, you're responding sarcastically. I know that there's something more behind how you're responding. So let's unpack what's really happening. Let's talk about that.
And are you even aware? Like, because are you even aware when you're being sarcastic? Because I find sometimes it's like, if I'm not caught out on it, it doesn't even register that this was, not an authentic response. Like that was my response, not knowing that it possibly was snarky or condescending or whatever. So do you always know? Are you conscious of your sarcasm?
I am very conscious of it.
You choose this life. That's how you said, I choose this petty life.
I don't know how to be another way, right? I can recognize what I'm doing and where it's coming from, but at the end of the day, I don't know how to be another way, right? So I'm aware because it also comes with eye rolls. It also comes like my face tells everything. I cannot hide an emotion if I wanted to. My face is like, yep, this is what she's thinking. Here you go. You're welcome. So I am aware, and I do try to stop myself, right? I do try to like pause But I'm also quick-witted. And so sometimes this stuff is just like, it's nothing. It's nothing, right? So, yes, unfortunately,
Wow. Latonya be choosing violence, y'all. To see, because I'm over here like, it's just, I don't even know sometimes. Like, they're helping me. And you're like, no, I know. I'm well aware.
Yeah, Lord help me. I have literally all the Bible verses talking about the tongue and all of that marked, highlighted, written on Post-it notes.
Yeah.
Because I know.
And you said it quite casually, but I do think it's profound when you said, I'm aware, but I don't know another way to be. And I think that's where a lot of folks find themselves like, I get it, and of course, we're talking about something as simple and, minute as sarcasm, right? But I think that can be applied to so many of us in regards to the bigger things. It's like, I get that I'm unhealthy. I get that I ruin relationships. I get that I'm mean. I get that I push folks away, but I don't know another way to be. And I think that awareness is beautiful and it shows humility, but I think that we have to be very conscious about yielding that and constantly choosing to depend on God to heal us in those spaces and to renew us and to create something new, right? We believers believe that when we come to Christ, we are created anew, afresh. And I think he can do that same thing for us emotionally in the soul realm and mentally. It's like you can become new, So I encourage my listeners, like if that's you, you're like, I don't know another way. I hear what you're talking about. I don't know another way. I think that you don't have to know. I think that you can allow God to lead you. And let's not even be spiritual. I think you can allow your therapist, your leaders, your faith leaders, your friends, your community, your mentors to help and guide, you in those areas. Like we're not responsible, though we're responsible for our own healing. We don't have to carry all this alone. Like we were not called to be isolated individuals. Like there is a community for you. I just feel led to share this. There's a community for you who will help guide you into freedom. Like you ain't got to just be the girl or the man who's always enraged and got an attitude and who does not ever find peace and who's always snarky and got to find something wrong with everything. Like, there's another way. You don't have to know it, but there is another way. Like lean into the community that surrounds you and find your freedom.
And I think a couple of other things go with that too, right? It's going back to being vulnerable.
Yeah.
You have to be vulnerable enough to say like, listen, I know I do this and I know this is not my best quality or my best trait, but I don't know anything else.
Yeah.
But you also have to be around people who create an environment for you to do that. Right. Yes. And so my husband is that for me. He creates that environment where I can take down some of those barriers and I can just say, okay, this is how I'm feeling. And I'm unlearning sarcasm. Unlearning is that.
Yeah. It's on me today. I use it all the time. I love that. Safety is so underrated, man. Like we have to be in safe communities. And I think that when we decide, that we want to be free, we want to be authentic, we have to start rearranging our environments, whether that's work, whether that's family, friends, partners. We have to start rearranging things to find safety because it's like, ain't no way I'm being vulnerable around folks I don't feel safe with. I tell God that, like, Lord, I'm trying. You keep telling me that, because my pastor always says there is no victory without vulnerability. I'm like, Lord, I'm trying, but I feel like these people are not safe. So you're going to have to show me, help me rearrange. Because otherwise these guards going to be up. So I think
sometimes the vulnerability, it's not on them to make it a safe space for you. Sometimes we're called to be vulnerable in uncomfortable spaces.
All right, now I'm telling you, we can talk
it's
about
hard. That's a hard pill to swallow. But if you think about the way that Satan works and how he isolates us, he makes us to feel that what we're going through is something that only we're dealing with. Nobody can relate. Don't try talking to anybody because they're not going to understand anyway. They're going to judge you. They're going to make you feel like this. When we are vulnerable, we take power away from Satan to continue to do that to us. Because what is he going to tell me about what I've gone through in my life if I'm open about it and sharing it in the right
Yeah.
spaces, right? He loses the power over me to hold that against me.
You preaching now. I'm gonna say amen when you're right. It's tight, but it's right. You're
So
right.
sometimes we're called to be
Man,
vulnerable. And in us being vulnerable, other people can be vulnerable too.
man. That leads me to my next question. What does generational curse breaking mean to you?
The choice. I feel like I'm like on broken record, but it's a choice. It's I talk about the rebellious spirit and how God has given us rebellious spirits. Millennials, we get a hard time about, oh, y'all want to go against the grain. Y'all want to recreate the will. Y'all want to do, the will needs to be recreated.
Hello. This
Because
will ain't working.
we 5, 6, 7 generations in still doing the same thing. Something needs to be recreated. And
Yeah.
I believe that God gave our generation the ability to be rebellious because Jesus was rebellious. Let's talk about that, right? Jesus didn't go with the flow. He didn't go with the norm. He was rebellious. God has given us the the balls, if you will, for lack of a better word, right? To go in and to be rebellious and to break generational curses. So yeah.
I love that. I love that. You was snapping too talking about that in the book. You was like, someone called you rebellious. Tell them I learned from the best. Jesus taught me, boo boo.
Yes, baby. Get it right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we forget that. Like Jesus certainly went against the grain. Amen. There a moment with us when you realize, and it can be something small, when you realize like, oh snap, I'm healed. Like, you have those moments when it's like something happens and you don't respond the same. And it's like, wait a minute. Either I'm numb or God has delivered. Can you share a moment where you realize like, man, I'm really healed?
I think this entire book writing process was that for me. It took over 10 years. And part of the reason it took so long is because you think you've dealt with stuff. You think that, it's no longer impacting you. Really, you've just buried it deeper. But then you start writing about it. And those emotions and those feelings come back up to the surface. And so there were certain chapters in the book where I sat on it for years.
Wow.
I just stopped and just sat on it.
Wow.
And so when I found myself to the point where I could write about these things, or even now just have conversations about some of the things that I've had and that have happened to me and not have so many negative emotions, that's my, all right, girl, you're doing good.
Yeah.
Keep going.
I love that. I love those moments. And I think we should all be intentional about looking for those moments. Because I think in our community, just in general, emotional wellness, mental wellness, these are new things for us, right? In regards to seeking them out intentionally. And I think that a lot of us have this misunderstanding or this expectation that there's going to be a moment where it's like, okay, I'm good, right? And I've shared this, in another community. It's like healing happens in moments, right? Like you'll there's a scripture that talks about like, and they were healed as they went, right? So it's not like this ultimate moment where you're on the pinnacle, you're on the mountaintop. It's like, no, you're going to see it by and by. And I think that we should be intentional about celebrating those moments and recognizing those small victories. Like, oh, snap, I didn't respond the same. Like, oh man, like I didn't feel no way about that this time, or they said this, or they were passive aggressive, or they were this way with me, or they ignored me, or they misunderstood me, but it didn't bother me the same. Or I responded with wisdom or with kindness this time and not whatever. Like whatever it is for you, I think that we should be intentional about noticing those moments and kind of collect those moments so that you realize, snap, I am really evolving. I'm really changing and it's beautiful. So I love it. I love that. When you are possibly triggered, by old wounds or events, traumatic events, and I think you've kind of touched on it a bit about, maybe Mother's Day or the holidays. How do you navigate those moments when things happen that trigger old stuff?
I allow myself to feel it all. Um, Again, the key is just not is not staying there, but I allow myself to go through the motions. So Mother's Day, I probably won't be at church on Mother's Day, right? I will probably be locked in my home. I'll probably be eating ice cream, right? If that's how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. And it's a critical part of healing is allowing yourself to feel those moments. Feeling those moments doesn't mean you're less healed. It doesn't mean that you're still allowing the trauma to victimize you. We're human and we're going to feel them.
Yeah. We are human. Let's put these superhuman expectations down. Mm-hmm. We are just simply human. When you came to Christ, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, even, when we have moments where we feel like we're healed, even healed from trauma, you can still digress. You can still have moments where you feel like you were never healed from it. It's all new. Allow yourself the grace to go through those emotions and to feel those and keep going. Know that it's a journey. There are some traumas that we will never fully be healed from. We just learn how to deal and navigate them.
Yeah. Yeah. I was recently listening to someone sort of describe their healing journey and talking about how, when we come into physical pain, that as our bodies recover, typically, depending on how our bodies heal, there is some sort of scarring left. And of course, depending on the significance or the intensity of the pain, it could be a bigger scar, right? And even though it's healed, there is a visible sign that something happened, right? And that just stays with you. Like I was freaking lotioning my legs last night, looking at this scar, and I'm like, dang, it's still there. But that happened so long ago. And it was just a random thought, right? Just a random thought. I'm just lotioning and moisturizing, like, I wish that would go away. It's just right in the middle of my leg. I wish it would go away. And that's how we are with our emotional stuff too, right? It's like, I wish it would go away. And it's like, no, it's not. Like that happened to you. That happened. Yeah. Period. It happened. We have healed, yet it's still there. And it may pop up every now and then. A little bit of pain may come up. Like you said, that doesn't negate the work we've done to overcome and to move beyond that moment. So I love that you say that, like, we're just human. So feel the feels and deal with it as they come, right? The pain may come in waves, but the healing does as well. I think that's beautiful. What I was going to say was when you came to Christ, and it may not have been when you came to Christ, but just in general, how have you reconciled God's love for you, considering all that you've gone through? Like, how does one wrap your mind around the love of God, the intense, relentlessly seeking after you kind of love? How do you reconcile that, considering your life's history?
I think, I talk about this as well in the book, but I felt the presence of God before I knew who God was, before I had a name. I didn't grow up in the church. I joined at a much later age, like the age of 19, right? But when I would have those moments where I would just be crying and just saying, why is this happening to me? What is happening? Like, what is going on? What did I do wrong? I distinctly remember having one of those moments and feeling arms wrap around me. And obviously nothing is there. No one is there physically, right? But I'm feeling the pressure of arms being wrapped around me. And I was really, really young when I felt that. And it wasn't until years, decades later, when I did start going to church, that I had that feeling again. And this time I knew the name for it. This time I knew God. I knew what it was that I felt.
Yeah.
But for me, that was a sign that he was there the entire time.
I will run right now, girl. That
he was
makes me weepy. Ooh-wee. He was there. Oh.
Yeah.
Jesus. I gotta move on, child. You'll have me weeping in here for real. Because he was there. He ain't gonna leave you, man. Like he will not forsake you.
I didn't know who he was. I didn't know
God.
I didn't know Jesus. I didn't know anything. I knew that feeling, and I knew that he would, once I felt that when I was older and could put it to words, I knew he had never left me. He was there the entire time.
Man, I could really go on a rabbit hole right here, but I really want to say this, like, this is why, like, I'm a believer. I believe in Jesus Christ. I love Jesus. And, but this is why I'm not a Bible thumper. It's because God makes himself aware to his children.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and I don't want to get into a salvation debate, listeners, about, how we come into becoming believers. But there is a way where when you don't even know who Jesus is, where you experience Holy Spirit and where he is sharing of himself and pouring out his spirit. And it's like, yo, this is me, right? Like, he's not withholding himself just because we don't say his name or just because we have not come into the awareness of who he is to us yet. Like, God is God. And he has a way of just like doing his thing, regardless of our faith, like that is powerful, man. That's more powerful than any evangelism tool, than anything, like experience with him, period. Like, let God do what God's going to do. He's going, like, it's him who draws us to him anyways. Like, we don't find Jesus, he finds us, like, oh, girl. Whew. Okay. In what ways have you seen God restore? I know, you talk about how you are, still waiting on certain promises, right? You still want a child and things like that. But I'm certain there have been some things that have come full circle. Can you talk about a beauty for ashes moment that you've had?
Oh, man. This year alone has been nothing but beauty for ashes.
Yeah.
This has been an amazing year, like to the point where I feel guilty talking about it, right?
Because well, this is your place, girl. Talk, tell us. Testify.
I feel guilty because I understand how truly blessed I have been this year. So, I became a homeowner this year, first-time homeowner.
Congratulations.
First homeowner, thank you, in my bloodline for like 4 generations at least.
No way.
Right? Yes.
Wow. Latonya, girl, this is making me, I need some questions.
So that was definitely one. And then I think my bonus son, so yeah, I still have the desire to have a child of my own, but the relationship that I have with my stepson is like no other. He calls me Ton Mom.
First of all, y'all look alike. Like, can we talk about
that? Isn't that crazy?
Y'all literally look alike.
Isn't that insane? He is 4 now. I've had the pleasure of being in his life since he was 2. And when I tell you, like, God has restored, even without me biologically having a child, holidays are so much more bearable. The fact that this little boy calls me mom, doesn't leave my side when he comes over, wants to do everything with me, just loves me, just knows he'll just come in and give me the biggest hug and the biggest kiss on my cheek, like out of nowhere, not knowing that I'm desperately needing it in that moment. So, yeah, it's just been amazing.
Man, that is beautiful. That's so beautiful, Latonya. What are you hoping that your readers take from this book?
God's presence, God's love. I know the book is about my life, obviously, but I don't want people to see me when they're reading the book. I want them to see God. I want them to see what he's capable of. And I'm hoping that as a result of that, they'll trust him with whatever trauma they have, right? Yeah. They'll trust him and know that he's going to work it out.
I love that. And there's something you say in there that I hope is encouraging to your readers and the listeners who are listening right now is You say, I might not have been the cause of the trauma, but I was responsible for healing from it. And I hope that listeners, you take that to help you shift your perspective and how you move forward in overcoming all the things that have happened to you. So yeah, thank you. Thank you, Latonya, for sharing a piece of your story. And I didn't want to give too many spoilers away. So y'all, I really hope that you go get this book right away so you can be encouraged and inspired and uplifted and ministered to, because the girl was preaching in here, okay? I can't wait to finish it. I can't wait to finish. All right, let's get into brownie points. This is the segment set aside for us to celebrate ourselves for a recent victory, whether big or small. So Latonya, what are you giving yourself brownie points for?
So we moved into our new home in July, and just last week we have finally finished setting everything up. Oh, that was such the process. I get why people are like, I'm never moving again, because I very much feel that. But I'm proud of us. I'm proud of me. You know, we did it. So
I love that. I cannot wait for the day to come for me to do all those things. That's incredible. Congratulations again, girl. Like,
thank
oh my goodness. I'm giving myself brownie points for finally getting my second tattoo. I've been wanting it for like 5+ years, you know.
We talked about going to get tattoos together at one point.
I'm still down, girl. Okay, I'm still down because I want more. But I got my second tattoo finally. It's right here.
Oh, I love
it. It says "Beauty for."
I love that placement.
Yeah, it says "Beauty for Ashes." It's a lily, and the stem says "Beauty for Ashes."
Wow.
Yeah. So I finally got that done. So now I got 2 down and like 3 more to go. All right. If you are watching on YouTube, I would love for you to put in the comments what you are giving yourself brownie points for. If you're listening, I would love for you to hop over to social media or to YouTube and get in the comments with us and tell us what you are celebrating yourself for. We are so hard on ourselves, especially at the end of the year, man. It's like, oh, I didn't get this done, didn't get that done. I'm still... Listen, celebrate yourself. Every win is a win. A win is a win. A win is a win. Thank you again so much, Latonya, for sharing your heart, for being vulnerable, for being open. And I do believe that every reader you have will be tremendously blessed by this. I've already highlighted so much, girl. Like, I just pink highlighted yourself. So yes, I appreciate you. Please tell us where we can get this book and how we can, continue following you and keeping up with what you got, going on and what you have coming up.
Yeah. So the book is available through barnesandnoble.com. It's available on Amazon. It's also available as an ebook or Kindle as well. On social media, you can find me on Instagram, LalaLivia8. So
wonderful. And I'll put all those links in the description so you guys can quickly purchase the book and quickly follow Latonya. And as for me, you can, of course, follow me on social media, Instagram and Facebook at Shades of Brown Podcast. And if you'd like to buy some podcast merch, you could visit everythingalyb.myspreadshop.com or just click the link in the description below. If you would like to sponsor an episode, feel free to do so. You can click the link in the description below as well. And if you are a potential podcaster, you are an aspiring podcaster, but you're just not sure where to start, I would love to help you. I've got some resources for you. So please schedule a consultation with me, a free consultation with me, and we can get that going. Your voice is needed as well. And if you would like to support this podcast in a way that does not cost you any money, you can, of course, follow me on social media. You can subscribe to my mailing list. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel if you're watching on YouTube. And you can leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts if you listen there. And of course, you can just share with your friends and family. Like, that helps me a ton. I appreciate all of your support in whatever form that it comes in. So yeah, that's all. But thank y'all for listening. And again, thank you, Latonya. This is amazing. Like legit, I need tissue to like wipe my freaking eyes and nose, child, because you got me weeping over here. But thank you. And thank y'all for tuning in and supporting Shades of Brown. As always, I'd like to leave you with this. I hope that you would be well, love well, and be loved well. You deserve that. Until next time, bye-bye.